There was no exit that she could find, only more endless corridors of repeating reflections. She felt like she was chasing her own terrified face. But no, she wasn't doing the chasing. He was. She was pursued through the funhouse, chased by laughter and transient images in her periphery. She had to force herself forward, onwards, towards freedom, away from him, away from the black and white clown. Her right hand smeared sweat and oil across the mirrors as she dragged it along. It was a trick her mother had taught her back when she was a child. You can get out of any maze in the world, she had told her, if you just put your right hand on the wall and follow it out. His image, the clown's face, kept appearing on the glass, darting around her from places unseen. She knew he was close, for she heard his laughter and she heard his footsteps, but she couldn't be sure where. Sometimes it seemed like he was right in front of her, so real, so close. Black diamond eyes and a ragged, colorless suit, tattered collar and wiry black hair, razor blades embedded in his fingertips. An ashen smile scorched across his face. But he was never actually there. He was close, but such was the madness that was the funhouse. She couldn't be certain what was real and what was mirage. Each mirror was pristine, like crystal. Every image held weight and malice. Each one felt real. "Where are you?" she mumbled through exhausted lips, her head turning and twisting as she fell through corridors and corners, hollering in spite at his mockingly curled lips. "Where are you?" The exit must have been close, surely. She felt like she had been wandering for hours, and she started to pass areas she knew she had already been. She could trace her smeared handprints across the mirrored walls. Finally, there was a long corridor before her, the longest straight shot yet, the only place she hadn't yet tried. Finding her last, desperate reserves of energy, she bolted down the path. But as she reached its end, she realized that there was nowhere left to go. Her hand fell into a corner, and she traced the solid back wall to the other corner. And she finally rested, not because she wanted to, but because she'd run out of places to go. Her only option was to turn back towards the approaching laughter, towards the clown with the razor fingers. She pounded against the glass with her palms at first. She begged, to God, to anyone, for a way out, for help. Then her begging, curdled by fear, became rage. Primal rage, as the footsteps seemed to set round the corner. It was her, and the clown. She looked back the way she'd come. It was just one long hallway. No way in but one. No way out but dead ahead. It was a straight shot. Just her and him. Just life and death. Twisting her torso, she yelled as her fist met one of the glass panels on her left. The glass screamed, and bloody shards fell into the floor. Smearing her fresh blood across the pieces, she found the largest and most intimidating blade the shattering had made, and she gripped it so tightly that the edges easily split her own skin. One way out. Her versus him. Fight or flight. And she had made her decision. She wouldn't go down without a fight. The clown was coming, sprinting through the funhouse like the madman he was. His laughter echoed down on her, falling around her from seemingly every direction, and she thought she was ready. Immediately he came. His reflection shot across the dozens of mirrors that span the hall, his smile glistening across dozens of faces. But he only appeared on the mirrors. No one had rounded the corner. In the reflections, the clown stood with shoulders squared and predatory arms held onto its sides, like it was staring her down. But no one stood at the end of the hall. She wondered if he could have been standing around the corner, waiting for her to come to him, instead of the other way around. But his reflection overtook hers, on every mirror, as if he stood between her and every panel in the entire hall. Something was off. "Come on!" she screamed, her weapon poised and ready. "I'm right here! Show yourself!" The laughing, that seemed like it was coming from everywhere, stopped. The smiling reflections gazed at her, and then, seemingly, they gazed past her, as a tapping sound came from the glass behind her. Turning her head, and only her head, she noticed that the clown was reflected behind her as well, on the entire dead-end wall. It was like he stood right there, but that couldn't be. She had touched those mirrors herself. The smear of her hand still sat across the clown's grinning lips. But that was when she realized the tapping had come from the mirror itself. The clown reflection before her was waving at her. It was the only reflection that did so. Around her, all the images started to tap and knock against the glass, each one moving independently of the others. They chuckled. They mocked her from inside the mirrors. Then, the clown's smiles all faded in unison. Their faces, their cheeks started to tremble, as a carnivorous hunger burned behind their eyes. It started with the one that had been waving. He raised his hand and placed the razor blade embedded inside of his index finger on the panel of the glass. And then, he started to carve downwards. The screeching of dissected glass filled the funhouse as all the reflections followed the lead at their own pace, cutting their mirrors in two from the inside out. She felt angry, boiling tears fill her eyes, causing her to only grip the large shard tighter in her hands. The mirrors around her started to crack as the clown started to push on them from the inside out. They were pushing their way out from the inside, birthing themselves into the world like snakes from eggs. As their arms and faces stretched out from the mirrors, she bent over and picked up a second shard of glass. With a deep breath in and a long, hissing breath out, she calmed herself. Blood dripping from her hands, she braced herself. Her situation was more complicated than before, but the basics were still the same. There was one hall, one way out. She wouldn't go down without a fight.